Hey everybody, this is Sam and Raphael, and today we're down at the headquarters of the Waterfront Development Corporation to interview Deborah Belitsky, the passionate leader responsible for spearheading the Waterfront Phase 4 expansion. This roughly $50 million project will stretch from 10th Street to 15th Street and will incorporate several unique and innovative features such as a Century Playport, observation deck, and plenty of open spaces for families to enjoy.
The Portland neighborhood has experienced a revitalization over the last 5 to 10 years, and there are many exciting residential and commercial projects in the area that bode well for future development. The waterfront expansion has brought a lot of optimism to the area, and we're excited to get a peek behind the curtain to learn about what's to come. This is your monthly neighborhood update with Raphael Collazo and Sam Heine.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Street Talk. We're down here at the Waterfront Development Corporation with Deborah Belitsky, who is the president and executive director of the organization. And there's a lot of exciting things happening on the waterfront in Louisville that are positively affecting the city and the neighborhood surrounding. So we're excited to be here to get the inside scoop. So thanks for being with us
Thank
today.
you for having me.
Yeah, excited to meet you.
Yeah. So just to start things off, I just thought this was interesting to paint a little bit of a background story. You come from the legal space. You practiced law for a handful of years before you got into Develop Louisville and the Waterfront Development Corporation. It's kind of an interesting transition. What brought you over here?
Yeah, so I actually practiced law for 21 years here in both the public and private sector. I started in the private sector in a small firm, and then after about 2 years, I was offered a position at the Jefferson County Attorney's Office doing all of the planning and zoning for Louisville and Jefferson County. So I had that position for about 9 years and had then been offered a position in the private sector and practiced at the law firm of Wyatt, Tarrant and Combs for nine-ish years. And I wasn't sure that I didn't want to do it, but I just kind of hit a wall. And so I ended up deciding to just take a leave and focus on some other things. And I took a job at that time back at the county attorney's office where I had been before I was at the private sector. And while I was there for less than a year. I was offered the position as the director of Develop Louisville with Louisville Metro Government. And I had planned on staying in that position for a little while and was not even there 2 years and was offered the position to come over to the waterfront. And during that couple of years where I was jumping from job to job, I really didn't have a plan laid out exactly where I wanted to go or what I was going to do next. In fact, I was still very much thinking about returning to the practice of law. And when the position opened up at Waterfront Park, it was as if a light bulb just went off, and I knew instantly, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. This is why I kind of had that very, I guess call it a little bit unstable journey for that period where I just knew that I wanted to do something else, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And then it presented itself to me, and it just was amazing. It's like this little sliver of the universe opened up, and I was invited to step in, and it's just been a great almost 6 years now that I've been here.
Very serendipitous, it sounds like.
It was.
Yeah, and it's somewhat of a similar path that a lot of people follow into the real estate space. I know Sam and myself both weren't in the real estate space right out of college. I know I did software development and consulting, and I believe Sam was in the marketing space, if I'm not mistaken. Advertising and marketing. So, finding your path, sometimes it takes some turns, but obviously you've been contributing in a great way here in Louisville, so we appreciate that.
And I've been involved in around the waterfront and real estate development and zoning regulations and environmental regulations, local government officials, state government officials for all of my entire career. And really, I didn't put all the pieces together. They kind of got put together for me. But when the position became available at that time, when I first came to Waterfront, I was the deputy director. I was asked to come in because our then 28-year deputy director was retiring. And so I was asked to come over and be the deputy director under David Karam. But it was just as if like all of the pieces came together, and that I had been working so hard toward, and it's just been great.
It's funny how life happens that way.
It does.
You had all the tools in your tool belt, and it just kind of lined right into place.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of exciting things happening right now with the Waterfront Phase 4 coming up, which we'll touch on a little bit here in just a bit. But what I think is interesting, because I think a lot of people think about the development of the waterfront over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. There's been a lot of exciting things that have happened and unfolded, but the first phase unfolded in the 90s. And I was wondering if you could just give us a little bit of a timeline of how that kind of came to be up to this point and how that's impacted Louisville as a whole. I know you weren't involved the whole time, but...
I wasn't involved, but I was here. And I first came to Louisville in 1988 as a freshman in college. And so at that time, our waterfront was still what it had been for decades, which was just basically a wasteland of environmentally contaminated industrial uses. So we had scrap yards and junk yards and sand and gravel operations and asphalt terminals and oil tanks and refineries, railroad tracks, and just a lot of vacant industrial buildings, and you could not access our waterfront. You could not access our downtown waterfront. And there were decades of efforts to try to redevelop the waterfront leading up to when our organization was initially formed, which was in the mid-'80s, 1986. And we were formed as a partnership between the city, the county, and the state. And the sole purpose of our organization was to oversee the redevelopment of our waterfront. And it wasn't until the time that our organization was created and there was an entity that was put in charge that really just transcended the political turnover and inherent in our elected officials, and that we could really get busy. And so in the late 80s, a master plan was created for the redevelopment of the first 3 phases of Waterfront Park, which are what we now know of as Waterfront Park. But it was years of land acquisitions, developing environmental plans, getting construction approvals, getting Army Corps of Engineer approval, getting railroad moved, getting River Road moved, getting an interstate ramp moved, and just I wish David Karam was here to tell you the story, because he could fill your entire podcast with just a history of all of the stories that were behind each and every individual parcel that went into the development of Waterfront Park. But this community has been behind this project, has been involved in the project, has believed in the project from the very get-go, and it's taken just the cooperation of our city, back then our city, county, and state, because we were not merged, and some really generous donors and corporations to really come together to make this project happen. And which I think is what has contributed to the success and still the overwhelming popularity of Waterfront Park. It's been community-based project that everybody has had a hand in. And so, the first phase of Waterfront Park was dedicated, I think it's 24 years ago, but the first phase of Waterfront, the Great Lawn, was dedicated over 20 years ago. The first full phase, which is on basically the western side of what you know of as Waterfront Park, is going to be 25 years old next year. And so it's taken over 35 years just to get these first 3 phases completed. The last thing we completed was the Big 4 Bridge. We're celebrating the 10th anniversary this year of the opening of the Big 4 Bridge, which happened in February of 2013. So happy birthday, Big 4 Bridge. And just this park is now, we've gone from an area where nobody could access the river to downtown Louisville's most visited tourist destination, our most beloved community space. We've got the most iconic thing in our city now with the Big Four Bridge, and it's had a tremendous impact on the downtown and surrounding neighborhoods. This park has catalyzed over $1 billion of redevelopment activity in downtown and surrounding neighborhoods. Because if you look at it, the Yum Center wouldn't be here if this was still a wasteland. Louisville Slugger Field, the soccer stadium, Whiskey Row, the resurgence of Nulu, Butchertown, all of these are really spin-off developments, and of course the Botanical Garden, and the list goes on and on. It's really been as a result of this park and the transformation of this space.
Yeah, well, and especially when you think of all of the events that take place here every year, like World Fest and what was Forecastle and Waterfront Wednesday, and all the apartment buildings down. We were talking about this before we started.
Road, yeah.
The apartments down River Road.
Mm-hmm.
So you could totally see.
Yeah,
how it would
and
stand
not to
out.
mention the impact it's also had on Southern Indiana. I know we were talking offline a little bit about the impact that, even in Jeffersonville, I mean, you walk across the walking bridge over there, it's night and day difference than what it was a decade ago.
Absolutely. I mean, they have benefited immensely, and they have the benefit of the Big Four Bridge just ramp emptying into their downtown area over their flood wall, on the dry side of their flood wall, whereas on our side, you're coming into a floodplain. It's a little bit more challenging to develop, but guess what? We've made the absolute best we can possibly make out of it. We activate the space. There's over 150, depending on how you count the events, 150 to 250 events in this park every year. It's a major catalyst for activity, and has a massive tourist impact. Over 1/4 of the visitors that come to this park are from outside the region. So they're either in town for another reason and coming and enjoying the park, or they're coming into town for one of our festivals or events or things that are happening here.
Absolutely. I mean, whenever I have friends that visit Louisville, that's one of the top places that I take them to, because it gives them flexibility to do a variety of different things. Whether there's actual events going on, you can partake in that, or you can walk across the bridge to other parts of Southern Indiana and take advantage of that as well.
It's had a tremendous impact regionally, and will only continue to do so.
That's amazing. No, so one of the things we want to talk about, and I know that's probably what a lot of people that are listening to this as well are excited about, is the Phase 4 expansion. So as you mentioned, you've had 3 phases that have been completed. Almost $100 million in impact. I mean, almost $100 million invested in providing or creating the waterfront as we know it today, and over $1 billion in economic impact. Now the 4th phase, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be over a $20 million project, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a $50 million
it's gonna be $50
project.
million.
Yes.
Okay. I think the original one I seen was $22 million, but I guess now it's been bumped up.
Pre-inflation.
Pre-inflation.
No.
Oh, okay. So
it's been. I think the initial master plan showed it at about $35 million, and then when we priced it out, even just the master plan, years later, because that was done in 2014.
Yes.
So the prices of everything, plus, when you get into real actual design, you can price a master plan. It's like pricing a cartoon drawing. Really, you're doing your best to try to estimate the amount of concrete and pipes and landscaping you're going to put in, but it's not until you actually have a physical plan that you can price it out and bid it out. And
Absolutely.
So we are now seeking to raise $50 million for this project. To date, we've raised $26.5 million, so we've surpassed the halfway mark in just a few years. So it's
awesome.
a very exciting project.
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things I'm curious about is, one of the things that you had mentioned is you had created or organized the plan right around 2014. You've made a lot of progress over the last several years, but I was just kind of curious as to some of the challenges that you've faced through the project and how you've been able to slowly overcome them, and over time, hopefully deliver the final project as it is planned to be. So.
Well, you guys are in real estate, so I trust you have encountered your fair share of obstacles, which you just do anytime you're trying to build or do anything. And we've got the benefit of being right along the river, which is what makes this is. Let's face it, everybody wants to be near the river. People are just drawn to the water. It's just natural. It's a human instinct to go toward water, and you see that here when you're working right on the river. I mean, no, this is not the Caribbean, but it is what we have, and believe me, people love it and want to be near it. And so we've got this beautiful, amazing asset. It's also what makes it very, very challenging to develop here. One of the reasons. In the entire, this river floods. It floods a lot. It floods many more times than you're probably even aware. We're at flood stage 10, 15 times every year. Mm-hmm. And, and then every so often we're at floods that everybody becomes aware of.
Yeah, we saw the pylon outside that has the different markings of all the different floods.
And down in our lobby, we've got two of our more recent floods, the 97 flood and the 2018 flood, which came into our building, came up, into our building. We had to evacuate. So luckily you have a lot of warning for those floods, when they're coming for days. But, so being along the river just makes it challenging. You're dealing with a lot of environmental regulatory agencies. Another thing that we have, a special thing we have in Waterfront Park that not everybody has to deal with, is we have a big interstate that runs through it. So we're under the Federal Highway Administration and Kentucky Transportation Cabinet thumb for anything that we want to do. And, look, the interstate's here. We don't have the capacity to move it, but we're going to do our best to try to make it as pleasant an experience as in part of the park. And it can be a benefit at times too, because when it's hot or raining, guess where everybody goes during the chow wagon? Everybody's standing under the interstate. So, it's just on. When I look at what my predecessor and company had to deal with in the first 85 acres of Waterfront Park, and then I look at what we're dealing with the 22 acres that are Phase 4, between 10th and 14th Streets, I think this is going to be a piece of cake. I have nothing compared to what they had. We have basically a blank slate, and we have acquired almost all of the land. We're still trying to acquire just another 3-acre piece to make it 25 acres eventually. But it was a former industrial site, so we've got some environmental issues, nothing that we're not accustomed to dealing with here at Waterfront Park. In fact, we have won awards, the EPA's highest award, the Phoenix Award for Excellence in Brownfield Redevelopment for the Phase 1 of Waterfront Park. So we're equipped. We know how to do it. But it does take a while. It takes a long time, and you can ask my construction manager, who I know wished that maybe he had changed his number, because I asked him so many times, when do we have permits? When are we going to have permits? When are we going to have permits? Because I was ready. We had the money. I was, ready to go, and it's just a long process to get all the permits needed to do the development. But it's just. It's nothing that some time and effort doesn't, work through.
Well, it's evidence of what's already been accomplished over the 30 years that have already taken place. So you kind of already have a proof of concept that has been such an impactful for this section of the Waterfront Park. So it's only natural that the next phase is also going to have a sizable impact. And where it's located between 15th and 10th Street on the west side of the city, I think I'm excited to see what opportunities present themselves around that area as well as a result of the investment. And
what's so extra cool about that site is when you look at the first 3 phases of Waterfront Park, there are a lot of physical obstacles and barriers to getting to the park. Honestly, like the interstate runs along the entire length. There are limited places where you actually can get through the interstate. On cross streets, and our connectivity to downtown is disjointed. Somehow people find us. Somehow people. It's not caused a problem, but when you look at Phase 4, It is so nicely tied into the street grid at every street, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th streets. You've got two connections along the Riverwalk, and then you'll have the River Road extension, which is also slated for construction sometime. I don't want to say because it's not our project, but within the next few years, I am told it is going to begin construction to extend River Road from where it terminates now at 7th and 8th Streets all the way under the 9th Street overpass and then connect into Rowan Street, which is along the southern boundary of the park, right after 10th Street. So it will be a nice vehicular connection, east-west, west-east, to connect all of the phases of the park. But it's so connected. There are over 10,000 residents that live within a 20-minute walk of Phase 4. And we've been so intentional, and just as my predecessors were with the first 3 phases of the park, of engaging the community and making sure that whatever is built here is something the community actually wants and needs. Because why would we spend $50 million? Why would we spend all this time to build something that isn't what the community wants and needs? So at every step of the way, we try to stay involved and stay connected, and the residents who live the closest to the park are the ones that we obviously go to first, because hopefully they're the ones that will use it the most.
Absolutely. So yeah, and then that kind of leads us to the next question, which is related to the different components of the project. So this is obviously going to be executed in somewhat of a phased approach, which, so one of the questions that I have is related to, the different components of that individual phase. I know I was able to go online. If you guys have a chance, definitely go check it out online. It's unbelievable the things that are going to be coming in that area. And so, what are the different, I guess, early phases that you describe within Phase 4, and then what do you foresee being some of the impact to the Portland neighborhood as a whole? I know, with these types of investments, obviously there are investment dollars that come along to be able to support businesses and residential homes in that area as well.
First of all, what I will say is there's only the first phase, or what we call Phase 4A, is fully designed. And that is what's under construction now. That is an outdoor children's play area that we've designed in partnership with Kentucky Science Center called Playport at Waterfront Park. And it is not your ordinary playground. It is really a mashup of a playground on steroids with the Science Center hands-on learning type exhibits, outdoor, free, and open to the public. And this really started several years ago when the Science Center approached us and said, we're landlocked. We have nowhere to go. We've always wanted to do some outdoor science park type thing. You're right out our back door, essentially. You walk out of the backside of the Science Center and you will be on the River Road extension, and you can, just steps away from the Riverwalk, a 5-minute walk from their site. We would like to brainstorm and see if there's something we can do. So, of course, we jumped at that opportunity because this really gives us an opportunity to create something unique and unlike anything else we have in the city. And interestingly, that wasn't the first thing we were going to build. That wasn't our plan. It's just how, you don't necessarily plan things, but things happen for a reason and they happen the way they're supposed to. So we had our sights set on an observation pier, which is also a component I'll tell you about. And this idea came up and got so much momentum, so much interest on the part of funders, donors, foundations, and really we got so excited about it. We engaged the community. We asked families to come in the Russell and Portland neighborhoods. Both of those are the closest to Phase 4, and we held workshops and we said, tell us what you want us to build. And so based on that, we created this idea of Playport, which is just bringing real equipment and artifacts and things that you would see on the river, working on the river, a buoy tender, which is a Coast Guard vessel, and construction equipment and things that you would see out on a construction site, and real things that kids don't typically get to be up close and personal with. And build in some science-based, STEM-based learning, some of the how this works and why this propeller turns this way and why you can lift something really heavy with a pulley system and why something has friction and doesn't, and shapes and all sorts of things for all sorts of ages. And so we've created this really unique, exciting thing that is a bear to build, by the way. I will tell you, but we've gone out and sourced all of this equipment, and we've tasked our contractors with getting it so that children can play and maneuver and do things. So we'll have a real excavator on the site, and we'll have a real dump truck bed. It's enormous. And we'll have real excavator bucket from a mining operation that's 40,000 pounds. And we'll have real pilot house from a buoy tender, and real buoys and chains and things, that give that context of where you are, and that this site is where our city was born and why our city was born, with the locks and the Falls of the Ohio and all of that, and just bringing it to life and then making it educational too. There'll be a small kind of classroom event building that will be constructed as part of this phase that the Science Center will program with science camps and birthday parties, and then we can use, our community groups can use for different types of events. And then parking lot and restrooms and landscaping will all be part of the first phase. So that's the first phase 4A.
It's a big phase.
You can tell I'm excited about it. It's an expensive phase too, but it will be so interesting, and really will have a regional draw. And other things that we have in the master plan, which have not yet been fully designed, so there's plenty of opportunity for the community, and we will go out to the community when we're ready to start on the next phase and get their input. But the site of phase 4 also happens to be right at the entrance to the canal, to the McAlpin Locks, right across from Shippingport Island, which is part of a large inland wildlife conservation area. Many people don't know. Amazing bird viewing. So we decided, and by the way, best views of downtown we have in the city are on this site. It's a view we only get when we're zipping down the highway at 65 miles an hour. You can stop and take it in. It'll be the best place to view Thunder over Louisville anywhere on our waterfront, even on the Indiana side. And so we're planning to have this, but it'll be large enough to accommodate events and weddings and concerts and performances and fundraisers, hopefully, for Waterfront Park. And so we're creating this space for people to get up close to the river, because that's where people want to be. And it's unlike anything else we have in the park. So think of phase 4 as it will be every bit as award-winning and first class as the first 3 phases, but it's not a carbon copy. We will have different types of amenities and features within there. You'll also see things like you typically see in Waterfront Park: our benches, our swings, our picnic areas, and lawns. But there'll be other features that are quite different. So the observation pier, there's a conceptual planned outdoor exercise area. We'll have gardens and plazas and that sort of thing. All that is to be developed, but you can see that on the master plan, kind of what the thinking was in the overall design concept for it.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, and you had mentioned the Playport. I mean, I was able to see some of the plans. It looks really cool. And it's not only that, but it's going to draw in children from all across the city that are interested in exploring, a variety of different things. And like you mentioned, exploring some of the history of the riverfront as well. And go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's cool that you're paying homage to the community down there too, just tapping in, seeing what everybody values and what they want to see more of in their own backyard. But then also the historical piece. It's like a lot of people forget that that's like original Louisville down there. Like that's where the original hub was for so many years. So
absolutely.
This particular site was the site of the first onshore settlement in our city, at 12th and Rowan Street, which is at the entrance to the park. So really is a historically significant area.
Landmark.
And we plan to tell that story. We plan to include that in the design and in some interesting way.
Yeah, and you mentioned the interlocking of the roadways, the grid pattern supporting the park as well. I mean, we talked a little bit about Southern Indiana and what impact that's had, the walkability in that area. So I think this obviously is a catalyst for greater things to come for that area as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's really about the overall prosperity and well-being of this community, and that's really what this park is about. We want to create a welcoming, accessible, beautiful space for people to come together, and that's what people do. We come together at Waterfront Park. We come together when we're celebrating something here. We come together when we're mourning. We come together here to demonstrate. I mean, this is the place where people come to be together, in good times and in bad. And that is something that makes me so proud about working at this place, and something that is such an important part of our team's values, is making sure that this space remains that refuge, that connection space. And this will connect our community in a way that nothing else that we do can, because this river connects us as a community. Something about coming down here, like I said earlier, it's healing, it's mentally good, it's everybody's space. This doesn't belong to a particular neighborhood, it belongs to all of us, and people feel welcome here. So that's something that I'm excited to continue to expand westward past the 9th Street Divide, which has plagued this city for far, far, far too long. And I think this is something that will really help to bridge that, unlike anything else can.
Outside of coming out and enjoying the waterfront, enjoying the parks and venues and any events that happen throughout the year, what can people do at home to support? You mentioned that you were raising $50 million halfway to that goal. Is that something that the average citizen could contribute to in one way or another? Or what's the best way to support the overall vision? Because it's an asset, really, to everybody that lives here.
Absolutely, and I thank you for saying that. That is... there are a lot of ways that people can support. There are ways to support in very low cost or no cost ways. You can come down here. You can not leave your trash. You can come and enjoy one of our events. You can and buy a beverage or a hot dog from one of our vendors. You can give in ways, financial ways, which are also very, very important to the long-term maintenance of this space. We are a partnership between state and local government. We are not fully funded by those entities, so we have to generate the majority of our own revenue to keep this park going. And so our events keep this, help feed the park and help maintain the park. Our restaurants that we have in the park, and lots and lots of other ways, including the generosity of this community. And we have been blessed by having the community involved at every step of the way. And we've had to, in more recent years, turn back to the community and say, hey, if you love this space, if you value what it is and what it has done for this community, and you wanted to keep doing that and keep giving back the $40 million annual economic impact that this park has, then you need to help us to steward and maintain it for the long term. And so you can make a donation just to the operating, to support park operations. And of course, you can always make a $24.5 million donation for those who are capable to help fund the rest of the Waterfront Park Phase 4 expansion, or any amount less than that.
Absolutely. No, and I'm hopeful that through their efforts with this video and everything, we can have more people get engaged and really just learn about the history and ways that they can contribute to keeping this city as prosperous as it has been, in particular as it pertains to the waterfront. So as far as people wanting to get in touch and learning more, maybe volunteering, what is the best way to be able to do that?
Well, I would say check out our website, which is ourwaterfront.org. And look around there, and if you can't find what you're looking for, give us a call. We're here all the time. Stop one of our park maintenance supervisors out in the park. We're a very, very small, tight-knit team, so if you talk to one of us, it's likely that all of us are going to hear about it, and you'll get to the right person pretty quickly. And just give us a call. Our number's on the website, 502-574-3768, or just look us up and shoot us an email. It's anyway, we're small. We're very small. We've done a lot. We do big things, but we're a very small operation, and we love having community involvement. So yes, you can volunteer, you can bring a group down, you can help pick up trash, you can help paint light poles, you can help weed our gardens, our community gardens, and you know, we have donation boxes on the Big Four Bridge. You can drop a quarter in there, or you can you know, donate online on our website anytime, any amount. We get a lot of $10 donations, and those are sometimes the most meaningful ones, because those, you know, we appreciate that people value this park at whatever level they are willing to let us know that.
Definitely. And we'll make sure that all's included in the show notes as well. So if you guys are watching this on a video format or podcast format, we'll make sure that's all included there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Deborah, we appreciate you coming on. This was really interesting to hear more about.
Well,
Definitely.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, pleasure.
Appreciate the time.